Hello, welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. I'm Andrew Musgrove. It is time for the Monday show. Today I'm joined by Sam Mulliner as Mark Carruthers has caught that good old Christmas bug and isn't feeling too well. So we pass our best on to him. Sam has kindly stepped in to co-host today before he jets out to Germany to follow Newcastle United in the Champions League, of course, by Leverkusen coming up on Wednesday. But first and foremost, we're going to talk about that win over Burnley. Sam, you well?
Yeah. Looking forward to getting out to Germany. Loved Dortmund a couple of years ago, and it was the obvious choice for my one pass out for a Champions League away game per season that my wife has duly granted me.
Do you know if I received a text from you in the coming years and you said, I'm leaving the UK, I'm going to move to Germany, I wouldn't be surprised. You love it.
I like going there. I don't want to live there. I don't
No?
speak the language. German football just gets it so right. So I'll be going over there again at some point. I want to take my lad over at some point just for a Bundesliga game. Looking forward to going.
I've never heard someone talk so highly of a place. I mean, that is what the place you always compliment.
Yeah, I've not been to many places, so I'm not that well travelled. So I think the attitude is very lenient and tolerable up to a point where if you act like a D head, you are swiftly moved on. I like that attitude.
Well, we saw that in Dortmund, didn't we? Like the square was full of police, like on the
Yeah.
outskirts of it, and yet there wasn't a bit of bother at all
And of
afternoon.
course, you compare that to Marseille and the stories coming out of that experience. Germany have got it so right. And when I went to the Dortmund game, I was in the quote unquote home end. I wasn't alone in wearing Newcastle colours. Not a moment's bother. No problem. As long as you behave yourself and you act respectfully, you can enjoy your night, whatever. And it's perfectly legal to drink it in your seat in the stadium or whatever. Not an ounce of bother.
Well, we'll talk a bit more about Leverkusen towards the end of the show. Of course, it is a massive week coming up for Newcastle United. It started with a victory over Burnley. I very nearly said great victory. It wasn't a great victory. It wasn't a great performance. It was an important win. And it seems a little bit strange. I'm trying to get my head around, Sam, how to approach this show because on one hand, it was just so important Newcastle United win. That was the most important thing against Burnley. Newcastle United pick up 3 points. On the other hand, the second half performance, the first 30 minutes in the first half, it was a little bit concerning. It wasn't good on the eye, and that question about game management is quite rightly come back to the front of people's minds. I guess we'll start with probably the key point, the positive point. It is 7 wins out of the last 8 at home. Newcastle United have got 10 points from the last 12 in the Premier League, and they just picked up a win against Burnley. They're the positives, right?
Yeah, win's a win. They don't always have to be pretty, and this one certainly wasn't. There are some areas of concern, but it doesn't matter. It's one of them games where, on the face of it, if you can't beat Burnley at home, you shouldn't be in the Premier League. But on the other face of it, get the win, get out, move on, and look ahead to a huge week, a Champions League match and a derby match, which is the exact same scenario, ironically, for Leverkusen as well. They have their derby following on from the game on Wednesday night. But I liked the team that I liked the changes that Howe made. I know there's always frustration now when people see Burn at left back, but if you can't cope with Burnley, with Burn at left back again, then you shouldn't be in the Premier League. So he had a fine game. Good to see Cher come back in. I liked the rotation in midfield. I liked that Joe Linton was taken out of the side because I thought he needed to be. I don't think his performances have been good enough pretty much all season. Good to see Alanga get a chance. I was pleased to see Ramsey and Willock get a chance. We'll come on to performances later on, but Ramsey certainly didn't take his chance. There was sort of green shoots from Gordon, green shoots of revival from Anthony Gordon. Yes, his goals have come from penalties. but there was certainly signs of him getting back to his good self. And of course, we saw Wissa for the first time.
Yeah, loads of talking points from the game. We'll start there with the changes. There were 6 changes made. You've mentioned most of them there. Langer, Gordon, Ramsey, Willock and Cher, and then Bruno coming back into the side. The Burn Hall change always very interesting, and people do get really kind of heated about it. But the bottom line is that this is a kind of game where you make that change because Bayer Leverkusen is going to be more of a test, and then Sunderland is going to be a bigger test than Burnley as well. So as good as Hall is, and we know how good he is, he's got the potential to be England's left back for the next decade or more. Howe has to manage his minutes because the schedule is so tight. And the last thing he wants is him pulling up and being ruled out for weeks or months.
Yeah, because then you are stuck with Burn for a good while. It's an area of the pitch that needs some investment. Yes, we know Livramento can fill in there superbly, but then, Trippier's not fit. And looking ahead at Leverkusen as well, just again, really briefly, their system is maybe something that we could maybe look to employ over the coming years as the sort of plan B option. Again, I'll just leave that dangling there. But yeah, it's an area of the pitch that since obviously Target went out on loan, because he didn't want to sit on the bench all season. That may have been a game, had he not gone out on loan, that he would have facilitated that role in. I think it's an area that we'd look to strengthen in January. And if not January, definitely the summer on both sides, because Kraft looks like he's on his way out. You need long-term successors, or long-term, not successors. That's the wrong word, because both of our wing backs are young, but maybe long-term successors to Trippier in that filling that squad-based role, which he now has, and a competitor to Hall to keep that area of the pitch competitive. Because no doubt about it, they're 2 really exciting young fullbacks, and probably Tuchel will be looking at them pair as well as the future for England, alongside you like to Reece James. But if you're Tuchel, can you rely on him to stay fit? No. So yeah, it's an area of the pitch we need looking for. But I think for that game in isolation, I think it was a wise use of squad rotation.
Yeah, definitely. I think what was interesting watching them play, particularly in the first half, it felt quite unbalanced, though. It felt like they weren't too confident in giving the ball down the left to Dan Burn, although 39% of the overall attacking play did come down the left, but that was maybe more Gordon's do than Dan Burn's doing. But it does present that real difficulty that Eddie Howe's got. In an ideal world, it is Lewis Hall. This call about loyalty and all that is absolute nonsense, because he wants to play his best players on that position. He can't do. And I think he, just like us and just like, the players on the pitch, will be able to sense and see exactly what we're talking about. The fact that there just doesn't seem to be that confidence to give Burn the ball down the left. That being said, he put in an absolute blinding cross, didn't he, in the first half, and no one gambled. I think Willock was the furthest man forward. So he can do it, maybe in isolation, but it's definitely something to think about going forward. And we see the benefits of having Hall in that side. Looking into the midfield, we mentioned there Ramsey, Willock coming into the side. It was a brand new midfield. I don't think those 3 have played together, Ramsey, Willock, and Bruno, off the top of my head. Now, you were right. I don't think Ramsey took his chance. It was a big opportunity for him. I don't think he's helped by the fact that it's very stop-start. His career, he's been injured, then he gets to get a run of games, he doesn't actually get a run of games. He just gets a start here or there because of the rotation element. So it's very hard for him to kind of build the path to walk along, for want of a better phrase. How disappointed were you in Ramsey's performance? I've seen it split on social media. I didn't think he pulled up any trees. Others have seen little glimpses. What about you, Sam?
I was massively disappointed. This is sort of one of the ones where obviously we've had many a back and forth about Elanga and how I didn't want him and you did, and I was in the summer. I was also unsure about Thiau's defensive capability after watching him for Milan make numerous errors, but obviously Thiau's been magnificent. I was sort of comparing Jacob Ramsey to the Elliot Anderson deal in that Villa didn't want to let him go. It was a necessity due to their UEFA overspending on that side of things. And obviously we've overpaid for him, yeah. But I was really hopeful. I thought that was a real smart buy in terms of not him being a out and out first choice player, but just be a part of the squad and a really useful part of the squad. I thought he was absolutely woeful. I mean, he looked allergic to grass. It was that bad. He didn't look. He just looks uncomfortable. And whether it's comparing it to Elanga, in that I don't think Elanga looks uncomfortable. In that I think he's settled fine. And credit to Elanga as well, because he's played in that game and his partner gave birth in around that time, so he could have very easily sat that game out and spent time with his newborn and his family and whatever. And I wouldn't have criticised whatsoever, because that's important. That stuff comes first for me, whether you work in a shop or you're a Premier League footballer. But with Ramsey, I don't think he's settled. Maybe it's because he's had time in the treatment room, which he's no stranger to, unfortunately. But there were times where he couldn't find a simple pass. There were times where he'd had the opportunity to shoot and he'd lashed those sort of chances home for Villa, but there was just a real disconnect. It was quite concerning. But I suppose in that sense, you made a point there that he hasn't had a run of games. I think that's probably what he needs. Whether he's going to get that, I highly doubt. Well, he might, because of Joe Linton's poor form as well, but it would be a real big show of faith from Howe to keep Ramsey in the team for the 2 games this week when you've got a Miley there. Question marks about Tonali's fitness, but he came on to try and see things out. Don't think he had an immediate impact, but he came on with a minute to go, didn't he? Where it was very heart in mouth. Obviously, he gave away the penalty as well, Ramsey, which was pretty brainless. It was a real tough afternoon for him. A real tough afternoon. I would be surprised if he hasn't fully settled in, because I get a sort of similar vibe that I do off him that I do Elanga.
Well, just to give some stats from Ramsey's performance, he won 4 out of 5 duels against Burnley. He made 93% of his passes, so 56 out of 60, 73 touches. So the stats don't paint as a negative picture, but it's about what you see on the pitch, and I totally agree with you that he didn't really take that opportunity. Willock did a little bit better.
Yeah.
I felt plenty of running. I think he really wants to seize the opportunities being presented to him. I think he probably realizes it's kind of now or never territory. And he really wants to impress. And there was a moment, and this goes into Elanga's performance, who I thought was, unfortunately, he was way off the pace. There was a moment where Willock picks the ball up.
Hang on. Is this the first chink in your armour of admitting that Elanga was a bad buy?
I still think he'll come good. Things I've heard and takes on him suggest that there's a brilliant player there. It's just going to take a little bit of time. He hasn't been good so far, and it does worry me slightly because I went all in on him.
Yes, you did, and I don't forget.
No, that's fine. And look, if he ends up being a dud, I'll hold my hands up and say I was wrong. But I still think there's a player there, and that's not me trying to save what little reputation I've got. That's just because I genuinely do think there's a player there, but he didn't perform well on Saturday, and it was kind of summed up by this one run that he made. Willock picks the ball up midway in his own half, and he runs towards the centre circle, and for some inexplicable reason, Anthony Elanga comes from wide into the middle, essentially into Willock's pass. And you can see Willock, as he turns away to then go to the left, he's throwing his arms up in frustration. He's gesturing to where Elanga should go, and there's real like anger there. And it's not the first time we've seen that. Trippier does that quite a lot with him. Tino does it as well, and it just seems that kind of disconnect between Elanga and his teammates. And I think that against Everton, we saw if you play to Elanga's strengths, the ball over the top, it will work. The pace is electric. He has got that end product, but something's just not happening. I think he's trying too hard. The decisions he's making aren't coming off. The wrong decisions most of the time. It's tough for the lad, but let's leave that there for a moment. Let's talk about Joe Willock, because I felt it was another good outing from Joe Willock, but a little bit like Ramsey, a little bit like Elanga, I guess you could argue. He needs a run of games to build on it, because you can't have a good performance and then be out of the side and then expect them to come straight back in. It's difficult for Eddie Howe. It's difficult for these fringe players.
Yeah, I thought Willock was good in the Spurs Cup game too when he was brought back in on that odd occasion. Maybe there's like a bit of like a kick up the backside in it, or maybe he's just a bit rejuvenated and refreshed that he's got to move back to London on the horizon. I don't know. It's a distinct possibility that maybe he feels like his time at Newcastle is almost done. The links are getting stronger with him back to Palace, which is a move that makes sense. In the main, Willock has been very good for us over the last. I mean, he's been here a lot longer than you probably realise, but it's just the last sort of 12 months or so that it's really gone sort of downhill. But I agree, he has been getting better again, which is encouraging. Yeah, the Elanga thing, I think you're right. He obviously won the red card as well, but a game like that doesn't play to his strengths, because he's used to being utilised as a pace merchant on the counter attack. Which Burnley at home, you ain't playing on the counter attack. You've got to try and sort of navigate your way through a low block. It's tricky. It's tricky because his style of play doesn't fit into ours. So that's why it sort of left me confused as to why we've been chasing him for so long. It wasn't a move that ever made sense to me. And no one ever gets these things 100% right. Of course they don't. It's football. It's transfers. Like not even Alex Ferguson or whoever. So Bobby Robson got every single transfer right. It's football, but this was a key position for us in the summer, and it was a lot of money spent. And I still maintain it's a mistake. Where I know we used to go on, and I used to get tired with the Kubo brush, but there was others I suggested in that role. Akalouche was a big one for Monaco, and he's not long ago just got his first cap for France. He's absolutely flying. Yeah, it's annoying. It's frustrating. It's a big week, and just when you think things are clicking, they're not all of a sudden. But it's still what 10 from 12, 10 points out of 12, and it really should have been 12 from 12, which in the main was sort of maybe more than what we were expecting. It's just. I think the negativity stems from as well that you look at the table and it doesn't feel like we're making any progress. We're still in the bottom half, but it's all so congested between 4th and 14th. It is minimal. And I mean, even go up further than that. I mean, Villa are in a title race. They are. They're 3 points off the top. Villa are in a title race, which is again going into this summer was where I feel like we should have been. So yeah, I get the frustration, but I think this coming week could well define the season. In that a derby win would have us all on a high going into a really busy period, which we aced this time last year. That period, that run of results we strung together in quick succession over Christmas and New Year, and either side of that set us well on our way to getting back up to the top of the table. and it's going to have to be the same this time around. There's some huge fixtures coming up, and we are in a position where we can strengthen in January in this on this occasion as well. But yeah, I get that it wasn't wholly convincing at Burnley, but looking positively, we've managed the squad, we've made 6 changes, and we've still won. Mainly thanks to Bruno. Our captain is levels above this season. Levels above. Were it not for him, I would be worrying. But he has been head and shoulders above the rest. And I know he's had a few murmurs of maybe discontent's too strong, but he's not as good as we think. He bloody well is. He's magnificent. And yeah, if it wasn't for him, we'd be struggling. I mean, ironically, those 2 points drop, why it's not 12 points out of 12 is because we missed him in that first half against Spurs. I strongly feel that had he been on the pitch for that first half, the game probably would have been done by half time.
Yeah, I can't argue with your description of Bruno, captain magnificent, really. He's really, really come on this season, and he will, I think, definitely hit his best goal tally for Newcastle United if he continues in this form. A fantastic goal from him, Martin Dubravka, leaving us a little early Christmas gift with his positioning, but you can't argue with the quality from Bruno. It was clearly planned. He said that after the game. But it's obviously that the goal is important. It sets Newcastle on their way after surviving what was a really difficult 25 minutes, half an hour. Burnley came flying out the traps and really surprised everybody. Newcastle looked shell-shocked at the way Burnley just went for this in the opening half an hour and didn't really look like they knew how to contain Burnley. They really were caught on the hop, and it was really important that Newcastle came through that, they weathered that storm, and then it was down to Bruno to pop that corner into the back of the net. And he had a few half chances as well, didn't he, which were quite easily saved by Martin Dubravka. But that corner, Sam, how many times have you watched it back?
A couple. I thought it was everything about it was perfect because obviously, like you say there, Andrew, he meant it. And then the celebration was beautiful and wonderfully shot by Serena Taylor as well. There's some fantastic photos and footage of it. Yeah, it was great. And from then on, it was pretty comfortable. They go on to get the red card. We'd also then get a penalty as well. It was really comfortable up until stoppage time sort of thing. But yeah, that early barrage. Again, I maintain Ramsdale does not convince me one bit whatsoever. And I've been consistent from the moment we signed him, and even before then, to be honest. Like I say, if he was any good, he'd still be at Arsenal. He doesn't bring that sort of sense of calm. Yes, he can kick a football. Well done to him. Of which Nick Pope is his ultimate weakness, isn't it? Again, is he a player that's really taking his chance? I would argue he could have saved the penalty as well when guessing the right way. And I got this in the immediacy aftermath as well. He feels like he should have done better with it. Yeah. Other than that, though, it was comfortable. They're down to 10 men, which makes it easier. They were then on damage control from then on. They didn't look to go and get back into the game. They're part of the bus mode and made it difficult for us to go for the jugular up until they get that penalty in stoppage time.
But that's the issue, isn't it? And that's the strange kind of dilemma fans are facing looking back on this game. And I get, most have probably forgotten about this game already. I hope not, because we're doing an episode on it. But, it will not remember this game. But at the same time, I think it is important to talk about how Newcastle United were in such control without really getting out of second gear and yet failing to make their dominance pay. And I get it was difficult because Burnley, as you say, damage limitation, kind of just sitting back and trying to keep the score down, so to speak. They get that penalty, deserved penalty. It was, I don't know what Ramsey was thinking, no complaints whatsoever. And then it isn't comfortable. And had the cross been just slightly lower, we would have been looking at a 2-2 and all hell breaks loose. And I think that's the issue. Like, And I think the big thing I take away from that is that Eddie Howe was fuming. I mean, Eddie Howe was really angry for the majority of that game. Even before the sending off, he was absolutely raging. And just obviously when you, so cause I seen that back on the TV camera, because where I am, you can't really see the dugout. So you don't really know who he's angry at because the camera's on him. But it felt to me like he was angry at his players for not following instructions. And I think he will be fuming at the fact that, yes, they were in such control, but by the end of it, you know, we were grateful for the full-time whistle, even though we had the man advantage. And that is a slight worry, but what I take from that is the fact that he knows it wasn't good enough, and he knows his issues, and he knows that this is not good enough. The win's really important, but it's still not clicking. And in many ways, I'm a little bit concerned for those players who do come in, those fringe players, because clearly they're not doing what they're tasked to do. And obviously the levels are different because Willock is not a Tonali. Do you know what I mean? And Joe Linton has different qualities to Ramsey and all of that. But for all it was comfortable to be sitting there at the end saying, thank goodness that full-time whistle went, that is a little bit of a concern.
Against 10-men Burnley. Yeah, you're right. And that's the thing as well. If people want to comment saying, "I'll support the team," we're being negative about 10 points from 12 sort of thing, the fact that Eddie Howe knows that this isn't good over the past 2 home games proves the point. Voldemort had 1 chance all game, which came in the first half. Again, second half, we couldn't find him whatsoever. It's a concern. Witter did all right when he came on for someone who'd been out for 3 months. Looked all right.
Should have passed it to Alanga though.
Yeah, I mean, Alanga wouldn't have scored, but you know, that was the argument for not being a red card. VAR looking at it, well, is it a goal scoring opportunity? It's Alanga he'll probably miss. But no, that's harsh. Sorry. And again, I maintain that the fact that Alanga played on Saturday is a real boon and a nod to his attitude, because that's the one thing I can't question about Alanga: his attitude, his positivity. You look at the footage the club put out; he seems a real good character, and a real positive guy. But yeah, there are obviously elements of his game, but yeah.
Would you like some quotes from Eddie Howe just to carry on the point that we were talking about? So he said, it was a bizarre ending because we looked like we were home at 2-0. 1 goal can always change things, and the penalty happens. The extra man advantage then goes out of the window, and you have to see that bit out. So there you go. He knows it wasn't good enough. He also adds that he was hoping for a vibrant second half. It didn't happen. We didn't do well in the right areas. We didn't do enough in the second half to break them down. It's credit to Burnley and how they defended. So my question would then be, because this isn't like, you could remove the team name and you could apply that to quite a few performances in the Premier League this season. I mean, what is the solution? What does Eddie have to do to make sure that when they're in this position, we actually go home and we think, yes, they've won 2-1 and I'm happy with what I saw?
Yeah, well, I will turn that around on you and ask you, what's the recurring theme here?
There's a mentality issue, I think.
We can't see games out.
Yeah, I think there's a lack of confidence, there's a lack of self-belief with quite a few players. I don't think the rotation helps, but that's the name of the game when you've got so many games to play. I think some of the in-game management decisions have been a bit bizarre as well. I don't think he did anything. I think actually Eddie Howe set up right on Saturday. I think the decisions that he made were spot on. I think for me, this was down to the players and their attitude. And look, at the end of the day, they still had 17 shots on goal, 7 on target. They had nearly 70% possession.
Comfortable.
And, yeah, it was, but it wasn't at the end.
Yeah, and yeah, I look ahead to Sunday, and the alarm bells are there for against the side. Again, let's take the team names out of it and take the heat and the passion out that it's a derby. We're playing away against a side where we ourselves are weak at the finish. and the team we are playing against are strong at the finish and are used to coming back from behind at home. That is a concern, because if we are 1-0 up on 89 minutes, in the past under Eddie Howe, we have had confidence to see these games out with the minimum of fuss. That is so far gone now. And you're now at a point where you think, well, hang on, can we see this out at 1-0 or 1-1 even? You know, I that's the area, that's the element of worry that I have at the moment, because it's not been a one-off.
I think the other issue as well, and Eddie mentions it there in his post-match talk there, that they were sluggish to begin with. You know, so if you're looking at how that game went, sluggish to begin with, not comfortable at the end. You've got like a limited amount of time in the middle where the performance all right. And again, look, they were dominant, and it's easy for people to say, you know, you've overreacted and all this. But I think it is really important to talk about seeing the game out, because the margins are so fine. And again, for all they were dominant, you are literally talking about a cross at the end, which, you know, very nearly ended up in the back of the net. And, you know, that goes in, changes the whole dynamic of this week coming up. The pressure ramps up, and and yes, we won, we should concentrate on that, but also the bigger picture. You know, if you perform against like that, maybe against Sunderland next week, and I know it's a totally different game, you may be punished by them a little bit more than you were against Burnley. However, Sam, come on, we'll stick with a positive. 7 wins in the last 8 at home, 10 out of 12. You know, we've got to look at it. We're a few points off where we really ought to be in the league. I actually think we are, if my memory serves me correctly, we're better off than we were last season after 15 games. I'm not mistaken with that. So, you know, there's massive positives. Of course there is. But there's also that little bit of annoyance in the back of the head. But positives, right? Positives.
Yeah, well, I have been trying to be positive. I've been saying there's been positives, but our next 2 games are away. So
Again,
for
Sunderland as well, unbeaten at home, which isn't great. But that's a derby. Everything goes out the window for that.
Correct, absolutely. And I still think we'll get. I think we'll get something on Wednesday, and I think we'll win on Sunday. I do have sort of positive visualizations about how this week is going to go. I do really fancy us on Wednesday to get something, whether it's a draw. I think a draw is a good point on the road, by the way. Leverkusen are a bit up and down at the moment, but obviously it's all about Sunday, because we need the points in the league. We go above them with a win, and then hopefully that'll like keep them down back in their place a little bit, and then we can try and kick on again. This is the sort of start of this really busy run of fixtures, which it seems like we're already on, because we're already playing midweek weekend, midweek weekend, midweek weekend, and we've got the League Cup tied in with that as well. In what, a week or 10 days time, I lose track. But yeah, this is it now, where we've had a couple of good results at home. We've got the monkey off our back at Everton. Yes, it was disappointing against Spurs and a little bit iffy against Burnley, but we're out of it relatively unscathed, which is what we wanted coming out of that previous international break. So we've sort of achieved what we've set out to do. All right, there's been twists and turns, and it's been a bit meandering along the way, but still, there is points on the board, and there is still positives to be had. You know, there's more to come from Wissa, and can we see Wissa and Voltemada on the pitch at the same time, perhaps, and utilise, you know, our co-top scorer, Bruno and Voltemada are our top scorers this season. There are still little sort of niggling issues in and around that first team and in the squad as a main, but yeah, we're not out of it completely, are we?
No, but little blocks in the paving stone of progress, like that. Very nice, that.
Yeah.
I want to talk a bit more about Gordon and Wissa, but first and foremost, we have a new sponsor on board, Sam. New sponsor on board, and I actually think you're going to want to take advantage of this. Your little lads will absolutely love this. Okay.
Well,
There's a
we sponsored by
company.
Pokemon or Minecraft?
Oh no, well he plays football, doesn't he? Your little lad.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So there's a company called F Pro, and it is a training mat, and then there's an app as well. And essentially, you can set this up in your living room, whatever space you've got. And they are training programs built by UEFA coaches, which essentially look to develop your child's, or if you're an adult, I'm sure it'll work with that as well. Development when it comes to football, it tracks progress, it sets targets. It's kind of a fun way of just kind of honing those skills, which then can be used obviously in a competitive game. So it's lots of fun, but also does as well develop your play or your child's play. And it gives you, the parents, 20 minutes spare time to have a cup or a coffee and listen to your favorite podcast. Here we are. Fantastic. There is 40% off already online. However, if you go to their website, which is fpro.com, and you go /EIBW20, you'll get an additional 20% off. So that is a fantastic saving. It is well worth your time to go and have a little look and hopefully buy the product, because I think it'll make a perfect Christmas present for your budding footballers. So do sign up and have a little look and take advantage of that offer, because it won't be around forever. You can save yourself quite a bit of money on the product. So do head over to fpro.com/EIBW20. I'll pop the link in the podcast description box. There's also a little video on their website which shows you how it works, explains everything. Basically, it's done by a little app on the phone. You can obviously pair that to your TV, so it's bigger, but essentially the app is where you get all these training schedules from. You're moving the ball around left, right, up and down. It looks a lot of fun. We're going to have one sent to the office, so I'm going to try it out myself.
No, you can send it to me.
Well, we'll see. You can take advantage of the discount. Sign up, support the
No,
podcast.
no, if possible, F Pro, if you're watching Big Wigs, I want 11 gratis. I don't take a fee for doing this. I want 11 for all of my,
I'll tell you what, right?
son's under-9s team.
If Charlie wants to be in the ad, I'll send it down. You can film him using it, and then we can showcase it to the people.
Deal.
There we go.
Plus 10 more.
There we have it. So yeah, thanks to F Pro for being on board. It's much appreciated. Alongside NordVPN as well, who help us keep these shows come to you guys for free. The NordVPN link is in the podcast description box. 1 subscription, 10 devices. Come on then, Anthony Gordon, because it's not been going well for him in the Premier League. He changed the game to a certain degree when he came off the bench against Spurs. He was arguably the best player on the pitch against Burnley without really doing too much. He looks like he's getting back to his best, but a little bit like Newcastle United when they have won a game recently. I'm going to slap someone in the face if I hear them say, we're back, because Newcastle aren't back. They're getting there. And Anthony Gordon certainly is not back, because 2 decent performances against average sides where he scored from the penalty spot isn't him back. We've got to see a lot more from him. But I'm glad that we're seeing, as you said earlier, those little green shoots of recovery from him.
Yeah, he could do with a goal from open play, couldn't he? And hit the post, hit the bar on Saturday. So yeah, there is really encouraging signs there. I mean, the problem is both on the left-hand side again, with Barnes, who's been in good nick as well, hasn't he? So I think, as we've discussed before, the wingers are so important. As we see, not just with Newcastle. I mean, wingers now are the new sort of number 9s in the way football is played these days. I mean, look at Mo Salah at Liverpool in previous years. Maybe not last weekend where he didn't play and spat his dummy out, but Liverpool are struggling because Salah is struggling, and there are other elements which I'm all for to see Liverpool struggle as well. But I'm getting away from my point. Pedro Neto is Chelsea's top scorer this season, winger. Saka is so important to Arsenal. Trossard, when he comes on and plays out from the left instead of Martinelli, so important. Morgan Rogers for Aston Villa. This isn't a new thing. Other than Man City and Haaland, most of your goal scorers now, or indeed a high percentage, are coming from out wide. So this is why Alanga has been disappointing, because he's not got the numbers to fulfil why he was brought to this club. Which is why Barnes is successful, because his numbers stack up. Yes, he can go missing and his performance levels aren't always there, but his numbers stack up. And Gordon's hasn't been, which is why Newcastle is struggling, which is why he's been struggling. But yeah, and it has been encouraging, and big week for him. Big week for a lot of players in that squad. Can Gordon kick on? Will he indeed even get the nod in one or even both games? I'm not sure. Will we see Barnes go back out onto the right hand side? Perhaps. I sort of hope not, because it doesn't work. It looks unbalanced. It's an interesting one. But yeah, Gordon was more encouraging, and hopefully there is more to come, because he's had a bit of a rotten 2025 in general, Newcastle wise. The levels haven't been there, and assist wise, he hasn't got a Premier League assist since January. That's bad.
I think what I'm encouraged with is how Newcastle's style of play will change with Johan Wissa, because there were a lot of crosses into the box on Saturday, and yet Newcastle United only had one accurate cross from. Let me just quickly do the maths here, because this is a stat worth producing. So, how good are you at maths, Sam? So you've got
What, on the spot? I don't know. We're about to find out.
You've got 18 crosses attempted between Bruno, Gordon, Alanga. Then you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 additional crosses, one apiece from 7 other players. So what did I say? 18. That's
25.
25 crosses, and only Tino Livramento, but he put one in, and it was accurate according to the stats here, which is alarming. And yet, I think back, and actually, I mentioned that Dan Burn cross in the first half. Alanga, to his credit,
He put one good one in, didn't he?
Yeah,
it was one. That's the first good cross I've seen. I sent you a text.
He texted us, and there was a couple more after. And okay, one of them didn't beat the first man, but he was trying. And I think what we're going to see, and it sounds bizarre saying this when you've got Nick Voldemort, who's as giant as anything, but he's not the man to be there because he drops deep. And I think with Wissa now back and fighting fit, and it was great to see him. He looked like a kid at Christmas. He was buzzing, and he made some really good runs, which I enjoyed through the channels. And I thought that's the difference, because Voldemort goes the other direction, whereas Wissa's only going one direction. That's towards the opposition's box. But I'm just thinking, them balls at the box, you've got someone who should be there, who should be the last man, who's going to gamble, who's going to meet these crosses. And I think that's the encouraging sign that I'm taking from both Gordon and Alanga. Now we just need someone in the box to meet the crosses, because at least they're trying to get them in. It's just no one's there to meet them.
Yeah, I mean, on the point of crosses, our best 2 crossers weren't starting on Saturday, which is Barnes and Murphy. Murphy's probably our best crosser of a ball. So you would expect maybe for him to come back in on Wednesday, certainly for Sunderland. Yeah, that style of play maybe is an issue. So maybe we've been found out in that sense a little bit. And the point I made of maybe like the alternative formation, which hasn't really worked at all. Where, I mean, Howe's tried a 4-4-2 fleetingly, not a sort of strict 90s Brexit football style 4-4-2. And he's tried the 5 at the back as well. The way Leverkusen play is interesting, because they have a sort of quote unquote 5 at the back, but it's more sort of 3-4-2-1, where they have 3 centre backs, but one is sort of pushing forward. So, like, on paper, it sort of looks like they've got Andrich in centre of defence, and he's centre mid, so he has a sort of license to roam a little bit. Whereas like your likes of Kwanzaa and Tapsoba would stay, and then their big sort of selling point, if you like, is their sort of wing backs, which sort of occupy a midfield role. Grimaldo is a doubt. He didn't play against Augsburg, which, by the way, Leverkusen lost against Augsburg, which are kind of the equivalent to Burnley at the weekend. They were away. They lost 2-0. But I sort of see our squad and look at our sort of principles, and that we could have three very good centre backs with maybe letting Cher or Chow roam, using Livramento and Hall out wide, and then you can still have Bruno and Tonali in midfield. But the key difference with the way Leverkusen play to the way that we've deployed five at the back in previous times is we don't have two wide men. They play slightly narrow, arguably with like 2 10s behind Schick. Which is the point that sort of interests me. The kind of wingers, Grimaldo and whoever they put on the right, have space, and Grimaldo, if he plays, is probably their main threat. If he don't play on Wednesday, I would be very encouraged. And I think that could be the sort of plan B, where you could have Gordon and Voltemade as 10s in behind Wissa. And you can still have Bruno and Tonali in centre mid with Hall and Livramento bombing on either side. I just thought it was a point worth noting, because it could be maybe something to take note of going forward, because we're all sort of been scratching our heads and at various stages of the season thinking, well, have we been found out? The plan B doesn't really work. We don't look comfortable deploying that five in the back system that we have before. It doesn't really work against low block teams, and I think that could be a potential sort of scenario, because Leverkusen get a lot from their two wing backs, a lot, and Schick is so dangerous, and he's not left isolated because there are 2 10s behind him.
It's interesting because the fullback should be the most threatening outlet for Newcastle, really given the pace of Hall and Livramento. And I mentioned before in this game against Burnley, it was very unbalanced, and you could see that they weren't too confident. Just to emphasise that point, Dan Burn had 47 touches in that game, right? Livramento on the other side had 95. Lewis Hall came off the bench and had 45 touches, which to me suggests exactly the point I've been making, is that they do not want to give Dan Burn the ball down that flank. Interesting you mentioned crosses as well. The final stat bomb that I'll throw at you, Sam. You are correct in what you say. Jacob Murphy, the best crosser according to the stats, 52. Then Soundson, then Kieran Trippier on 45 apiece, and then Anthony Lang on 45 as well. And there's a massive drop off down to Harvey Barnes in fifth position on the list. 26 crosses. So,
but up until that recent run, remember, Howe was persevering with Gordon. Barnes was cutting a frustrated figure. It was only really in recent times and covering Gordon's suspension that Barnes was really deployed. Hall's great strength is going forward. Defensively, he really needed more help than what he got against Kudus against Spurs. I thought it was a really good battle, but a battle ultimately that Hall lost. He needed help. He didn't get help. Hall's fantastic. And that's not a criticism to Hall, what I've just said there, by the way. He's brilliant, but can't win them all. And there was issues there that weren't rectified. That was in-game management. That was flawed in-game management for me, really, rather than a sort of slant on Hall, because I think he's, like, as I say, he's brilliant, and he should be England's first choice left back. Livramento is getting better at going forward as well. That was his weakness. He was a cracking right back, but he needed to add that sort of attacking element to your game. And the point you made about crossing there is tantamount to that. So it's an area of strength for us that I don't think we're not taking full use of. And if those two have license to roam, we're employing that back three. Obviously your third one has license, but then drops back, and then the two can cut across, whether that's a Burn / Botman, whether that's a Chiao / Cher, whatever. You've got adequate cover, and with Bruno and Tonali proper centre midfielders there. It could be of use. I don't know. And then Trippier can come back and fill that role. Murphy can fill that role. Could Barnes do the same instead of Hall? I'm not so sure. Maybe not. I do think it's, as I said right at the top of the show, it's an area that we need covering in January. How you go about that is tricky. But yeah, I just thought it was worth noting as we're playing them on Wednesday, and it's worked for them.
Come on then, because we'll not speak again until next week. Just briefly, give me your score predictions for both Leverkusen and the derby on Sunday.
I think we get a point at Leverkusen. I'd take a 1-1, and I think that's a good point on the road. If we get more than that, fantastic. We need to manage Schick. We need to manage Grimaldo if he plays. If he doesn't, happy days. Tapsoba's a beast at the back, but I still fancy us to get something. Sunderland, I think we win 3-1.
Wowza. I'll take that.
3-1.
3-1. Someone is confident, and
let's have it.
Well, why not? Why not? We've got better players. It's just about the application and the aptitude. What the heck's an aptitude? Attitude.
And if both those correct scores are right, I want 11 F Pros delivered to my door gratis.
Santa Claus is going to be busy. Cheers, Sam. Well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that Burnley win.
No problem. I'm going to Heathrow now.
I was going to say, safe travels to Germany. Keep yourself safe and enjoy the orange juice. And hopefully Newcastle United pick up a win or at least a draw in Germany. And hopefully your 3-1 prediction against Sunderland comes in, because we are all for that. Get into the comments. Let us know about anything that we've spoken about in this episode. Do hit thumbs up. Do subscribe on the YouTube channel. Do leave us a rating and review on the audio-only platform. And take advantage of 2 fantastic discounted offers. First, the F Pro trainer mat. And secondly, that NordVPN subscription, which I'm sure Sam will be using over in Germany to keep himself safe while browsing on public Wi-Fi. Until next week, when me and Sam will return, I'll be back this week because we've got thousands of episodes to bring you. It's going to be fun, but Sam will be back next week. Keep yourself safe out there, ladies and gents. Thank you very much for tuning in.